The year was 1940, and the Cotton Club was not merely a nightclub, it was the center of the universe. Located deep in the heart of Harlem, it was a place where the jazz was hot, the champagne was cold, and the segregation stopped at the stage door, at least for the talent. On this particular Friday night, the air was thick with cigar smoke, expensive perfume, and the frenetic energy of a Cab Calloway set. But the real drama wasn't happening on the bandstand. It was unfolding in the private VIP room in the back, a plush sanctuary of red velvet and mahogany where the noise of the trumpet section was just a distant hum. Seated at the head of the table was Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, the heavyweight champion of the world. In the ring, Joe was a god of destruction, a man whose right cross could derail a freight train. But here, in this room, Joe looked small. He was surrounded by men who didn't fight with gloves. They fought with loopholes. To his right sat Vincent the Vulture Moretti, a mob lawyer with a smile that looked like a jagged scar and a suit that cost more than a house in Georgia. Vincent was flanked by 3 associates, men with thick necks and suspicious bulges under their armpits. On the table sat a bottle of Dom Perignon, an open box of Cuban cigars, and a document. It was the contract for the Joe Louis restaurant chain. The pitch was seductive, a string of steakhouses across the East Coast bearing the champion's name. The promise was simple. Joe puts up his name, the boys put up the capital, and they split the profits, 50-50. "It's a legacy move, champ," Vincent purred, sliding a fountain pen made of solid gold across the table. The nib glinted under the chandelier. "You can't fight forever. This is your retirement. You sign this, and you never have to take another punch for money again. We handle the logistics. You handle the applause." Joe hesitated. He was a simple man from Alabama who trusted people. He looked at the thick stack of paper. He wasn't a lawyer. He read opponents, not affidavits. The champagne had made him loose, and the flattery had made him soft. He reached for the gold pen. He was about to sign his name to a piece of paper that would act as a financial guillotine. The door to the VIP room didn't bang open. It didn't slam. It simply clicked unlatched and swung open with a quiet, hydraulic hiss. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson stepped inside. He was alone. No bodyguards. No entourage. He wore a charcoal suit cut so sharply it could draw blood, and his demeanor was that of a librarian entering a reading room, not a gangster crashing a mob meeting. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The music from the main hall felt like it had been sucked into a vacuum. Vincent's bodyguards twitched, reaching for their jackets. Bumpy didn't even look at them. He walked straight to the table, pulled out a chair directly between Joe Louis and Vincent Moretti, and sat down. He crossed his legs and smoothed the crease of his trousers. "Bumpy," Vincent said, his smile faltering for a microsecond before returning, tighter this time. "To what do we owe the pleasure? We're in the middle of a private transaction." "I know," Bumpy said. His voice was a low, smooth baritone, like gravel rolling over velvet. "I heard you were making my brother Joe here a rich man. I just wanted to come by and offer my congratulations." Joe looked relieved. "Bumpy, good to see you. Vincent here is setting me up with a restaurant chain. 50-50 split." "50-50," Bumpy repeated, tasting the words. "That sounds generous. Very generous." He turned his gaze to the contract lying on the table. "Mind if I take a peek, Joe? Just for my own curiosity. I've always admired fine literature." Vincent's hand shot out, covering the paper. "It's a standard boilerplate contract, Johnson. We've already explained the terms. The champ is ready to sign." Bumpy looked at Vincent's hand, then up at Vincent's eyes. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just waited. The silence stretched, becoming agonizing. It was a contest of wills, and Vincent, for all his bluster, knew he was staring into the eyes of a man who had allegedly won a knife fight with the devil himself. Slowly, reluctantly, Vincent withdrew his hand. "Be my guest," Vincent spat. "But make it quick. We have a press release to draft." Bumpy picked up the document. He reached into his breast pocket and, with a slow, deliberate motion, pulled out a pair of wire-rimmed reading glasses. He put them on. The transformation was striking. Suddenly, the feared gangster looked like a university professor or a concerned accountant. It was a calculated move, a visual signal that in this moment his weapon was his mind. Bumpy flipped through the pages. Page 1. Page 2. He hummed quietly, skipping the marketing fluff. He went straight to the back, to the pages where the text became dense and the font size shrank to microscopic proportions. He stopped at the very last page. Clause 14b. Bumpy leaned in, squinting. He read it once. Then he read it again. He took off his glasses and looked at Joe. "Joe," Bumpy said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "do you know what unlimited personal liability for operational insolvency means?" Joe shook his head. "Sounds like legal talk for I pay the bills, right?" "Not quite," Bumpy corrected. "It means that while they manage the money, you own the debt. Listen to this." Bumpy put his glasses back on and read aloud, his finger tracing the tiny line of text. Clause 14b. Party A, that's you, Joe, assumes full financial responsibility for all debts, liens, and operational losses incurred by the management entity. Party B, that's Vincent, retains a priority management fee of 15% of gross revenue, payable before any net profit calculation. Bumpy took the glasses off and folded them. "Let me translate that into Harlem for you, Joe. It means they are going to open these restaurants. They are going to cook the books. They are going to claim the restaurants are losing money every month so they don't have to give you a dime of profit. But they will pay themselves a management fee right off the top. They get rich, guaranteed. And when the suppliers come looking for their money, when the tax man comes for the unpaid bills, they don't come for the LLC. They come for you, personally. They will take your house, your car, and your gloves." Bumpy paused, letting the reality sink in. "You won't be boxing for glory anymore, Joe. You'll be boxing until you're 50 years old, getting your brains beaten in just to pay off the debt from a restaurant you don't even control." The room was silent. Joe Louis stared at the paper as if it had turned into a rattlesnake. Vincent Moretti slammed his hand on the table, rattling the champagne glasses. "This is slander," he screamed, his face flushing purple. "This is standard industry practice. Who do you think you are, Johnson? A lawyer? You're a thug. I should have you thrown out." He gestured to his bodyguards. "Get him out of here." The 3 bodyguards stepped forward. Bumpy didn't stand up. He didn't flinch. His hand moved to his vest pocket, not the side pocket where a gun would be, but the upper pocket, where a gentleman keeps his handkerchief. Instead of a handkerchief, he withdrew a straight razor. It was an antique piece with a pearl handle and a blade of Solingen steel that caught the light of the chandelier and fractured it. Schwing. The sound of the blade opening was soft, like a lover's whisper, but in the quiet room, it sounded like a gunshot. Vincent gasped and threw himself back in his chair, knocking it over. The bodyguards froze, hands half reaching for their weapons, unsure if they could clear their holsters before that silver flash reached their boss's throat. But Bumpy didn't lunge. He didn't attack. With the calm focus of a surgeon, Bumpy placed the contract flat on the oak table. He smoothed it out with his left hand. "You have a typo, Vincent," Bumpy said softly. "Let me fix it for you." Zip. The razor sliced through the thick paper. It wasn't a tear. It was a dissection. Bumpy cut out clause 14b. He didn't stop there. Zip, zip, swish. The blade moved with blinding speed and terrifying precision. Bumpy wasn't destroying the document randomly. He was editing it. He carved out the paragraph about the management fees. He sliced out the section on exclusive rights to likeness. He excised the clause about perpetual renewal. The sound of steel on paper, shk, shk, was the only sound in the room. Ribbons of paper curled up and fell to the floor like confetti. Within 30 seconds, the contract was a lattice of holes, a spiderweb of white paper where the predatory clauses used to be. Bumpy folded the razor, but didn't put it away. He held it in his palm, the weight of it familiar and reassuring. He picked up the tattered remains of the contract. It looked like a piece of lace. He held it up to the light, looking through the holes he had made. Then he turned to Joe. "Joe?" Bumpy said, his tone gentle, like an older brother teaching a sibling to ride a bike. "In the ring, you wear gloves to protect your hands. You block punches. But out here, in the world of business, paper is sharper than any knife. Ink can draw more blood than a razor. Never ever put your name on something you haven't read 3 times. Because once you sign, even I can't save you." Bumpy turned his head slowly toward Vincent, who was still trembling against the wall. Bumpy slammed the razor tip down into the mahogany table. Thwack! It stood quivering, impaling the pile of paper scraps, the bad clauses, that he had cut out. "Vincent," Bumpy said, his voice cold enough to freeze the champagne. "Here is your new deal. Joe lends his name. Joe takes 70% of the gross. Not net. Gross. No liability. No debt. And if the restaurant loses money, you pay him out of your own pocket." You can't be serious," Vincent stammered. "That's robbery." "No," Bumpy said, gesturing to the pile of scraps pinned by the razor. "That was robbery. This is restitution." Bumpy stood up, towering over the table. "You can draft the new version tomorrow. Send it to my office. I'll proofread it. And Vincent? Yeah? If I see one word of fine print, if I see one comma out of place that tries to steal a penny from this man—" Bumpy tapped the handle of the razor. "The next time I use this, I won't be cutting paper." Vincent Moretti, the shark of Midtown, looked at the razor, then at Bumpy's dead eyes. He nodded. He gathered his coat, signaled his men, and scrambled out of the room like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. The deal was dead. Or rather, the scam was dead. Joe Louis sat there, stunned, looking at the shredded paper. He looked up at Bumpy with eyes full of awe and gratitude. "Bumpy, I didn't know." Bumpy pulled the razor from the table, wiped it on a napkin, and folded it back into his pocket. He reached over and poured 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to the heavyweight champion of the world. "You're the champ, Joe," Bumpy said, clinking his glass against Joe's. "Your hands are for knocking men down. They aren't for signing yourself into slavery." Bumpy took a sip, adjusted his tie, and headed for the door. "Enjoy the party, kid, and tell the waiter to bring you a steak. On the house." As Bumpy Johnson walked back out into the noise and rhythm of the Cotton Club, he didn't look back. He moved through the crowd, a ghost in a machine, a guardian in a world of wolves. The story of the edited contract became one of the most repeated legends in Harlem. It taught a generation of young men a lesson that no school could teach. The most dangerous battles aren't fought with fists. They are fought with words. And sometimes, the only way to win a game that is rigged against you is to take a razor blade and cut the rules right out of the book.